You know, if you're from Dazey, North Dakota, you're going to recognize a name that we're going to bring into this conversation right now. I mean, how often do you come to Duluth and end up grabbing somebody after hearing some great stories and think you're going to talk about Dazey, North Dakota? Mike Rasmusson is somebody that I did get to have supper with last night, that I did get a chance to visit with a little bit and find out a lot of history there and say, you know what, Mike, you have no choice. I'll tackle you in the hallway, but we're going to visit about this. Mike, good to have you on News and Views. How you been?
I've been great. Thanks for having me.
All right. I've been itching all day to hear you tell this story. It's going to involve the word Rough Riders. Talk to me about this.
Well, and I'm not exactly sure. I have to dig into it. So my dad's family is from North Dakota. We've heard about it forever. We used to go out to Dazey to see the old family farm in downtown Dazey, or it was out in the country. They moved to town in Valley City. My dad grew up in Devil's Lake, so I've heard about this forever. We used to spend a lot of time out in Medora and Bismarck. My grandpa worked at the Capitol for the Farmers Administration, and so my dad passed last year, and I came home with a ton of stuff from his house, and I started digging through it, and a lot of history stuff, Spanish-American War and names and all this stuff. And I can remember my dad and my grandpa talking about the Rough Riders, and so it would be my dad's grandpa and great-grandpa, and that they were part of it. And Teddy Roosevelt was a big name in our family, and we talked about it. So I was going through a ton of papers in the last few months, and I found about their travels from leaving Dazey, letters, getting a crew together and going up to Valley City and through Fargo and head on out to Cuba. And so I started doing some research and putting it all together. There's a picture of my great-grandpa sitting with a couple guys posing for this picture with sidearms on and obviously military uniform. And it looks like the picture from some stuff that I found online. It's actually from Manila, Philippines. And I have actually a folder I'll show you today. I mentioned it yesterday. So there's some discrepancies here if he was truly a Rough Rider or if he was part of the G unit that went to the Manila, Philippines. And for sure he was in Manila. I found this pamphlet that he has that was a supply sergeant from the Spanish Army. And it says right on the front of it, captured by George Rasmusson. It gives the date, and that was the date that Manila fell, that we hung our flag up. I mean, just amazing stuff to look through.
So he was right there.
He was
right in the heart of it.
Right there. And then, in fact, I brought in a piece of paper today that was sent to his family, and this would have been like 1905, from 2 blocks down the road here at a place,
Duluth.
Yeah, it's called the St. Louis Hotel, sent back there, that he was over here checking on a piece of property that we have, and somebody's been stealing wood. So they're going to go tomorrow to try to find him and do all this stuff. And whoever he sent it to said, you know, that looks like you'll still be able to plow tomorrow. And this is to somebody back in Dazey. You know, so it was so interesting to see this tie-in, and it's frustrating to me. I've called every person in my family to say, so help me gosh, if somebody else goes and I don't find this cool stuff while you're here, I'm going to freak out. You know? And so my biggest fear as I dig through this stuff is that in 50 years when I'm gone, my kids are going to clean up my house and they're going to find a box.
Yeah.
So I'm going through this stuff and trying to document it, and through AI and through everything, I'm trying to figure out exactly what we have so I can get it to my family members. And then my goal is to get the stuff back out to North Dakota. That Barnes County is mentioned a lot. We have old deeds from farm stands and everything that's in there from the 1900s. I mean, just amazing stuff. Letters from people, and get that out there and get those to the historical societies in your area. There are some mentions of Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders and different things, and getting that back out to Medora. I was pretty fortunate. Just a couple of weeks ago, we went out there as a family. I finally
to the new library. Right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And it did there in the Black Hills. I finally talked my family into taking a road trip to go out to the Dakotas. My kids and my wife are all about the Caribbean more instead of North Dakota in August, and we did that trip. And all three of them have said that was their favorite trip.
They love the Badlands.
Yeah, and my wife, her biggest line, everything in our house now, as I said last night at dinner, has buffalo on it. You know, that thing that we grew up out there in the plains.
As it should.
Yeah, that's right. So she said, you know, nobody's ever talked about how beautiful it is out there. And it was so interesting to me just the memories flooded back about going back there and seeing it. And, you know, that just how rough of an area that is. I mean, could you imagine what that was like, you know, and the history of your state and the Dakotas. And I think they're truly forgotten about.
Yeah. You know, what was so interesting to me last night was, okay, so you and I meet, we have a great supper. We're talking about Duluth and how important Duluth has been to my state, moving product through, shipping product through. I mean, people, I think, still don't realize the role that Duluth plays in moving product and moving what we raise, what we do, Mike. And so we're sitting there talking about this, and the next thing I know, I'm talking about Dazey, North Dakota. Yeah. And I'm talking about a man that went and down to the Philippines, was in Manila when everything changed, and you know, we still don't know whether he was with Teddy, but we know that he was going to be with Teddy.
Be a part of it. Yeah. It's some really neat stuff. And talking about Dazey, the first thing on the box, so the box that everything's in is a foot locker. It's a mahogany foot locker that my great-grandpa would have used to go to war. That was what he carried his stuff with, and now it's a decoration in our living room. It's just a beautiful box.
How many siblings you got?
I have 2 sisters.
I would be tackling you. But you're doing something to make sure they have it as well.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. I have a couple cousins, too, on that side of the family, and people are interested, but it's one of those things where we've heard all these stories and things sat in a box. I don't know if everybody realizes what we have. My sister's interested. But as we start showing these pictures, it's, you know, the handwriting of this stuff, this 1900 beautiful cursive. It's hard to read.
You know, I was reading it last night, and just the rich history of it. I mean, the documentation you have from the governor of North Dakota. It just shows how small a world we live in.
As we're running, it's pretty cool that as I open up the box, it has a couple shelves, and the very first thing on the top is my grandpa's diploma from 1936. I think it was 1936 from Dazey, North Dakota, velvet covered, and it reads it. And then he also had a promotion certificate he must have gone from the 8th grade to 9th grade or whatever it was. And I believe that the teacher was his mother. Fosmo was her last name. I'm like, that's how was Rasmusson's past classes.
So there was no guarantee he was going to graduate. Yeah, right. Pass.
Yeah, no kidding. So, but and it was just the stories that I knew growing up on this stuff. His family, so it would be my great grandpa, was the director of the bank in town, and they were very well off. The house that they built was very nice and big, and I have some cool pictures of that. And then the Depression hit. And they lost it. And back then, they were on the hook for it. And I know they lost a lot. And my grandpa was the youngest or second youngest. And, he had to go.
Second youngest
of 8 siblings.
Yeah, and that was small probably then.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so it went. In fact, the whole thing. I had an aunt, or my dad had an aunt, so it'd be a great aunt, I guess, that lived in Valley City. And when I was I was getting ready to come to work, and on Good Morning America, I looked, and there was somebody, and it looked just like my grandpa, who had been gone for several years. And I look up, and I saw the name of Henrietta Dotting. So I called my mom, and I said, how would I know that name? It's a lady from North Dakota. And said, that's your dad's aunt. So I called my dad and told her, and sure enough, she was at the time, she was 104. So I got a hold of the place that she was living. It was a assisted living place, and I sent some letters back and forth, and it was just amazing. So that was, I can't remember what years that was, but that history, and it's always been such a connection in our family, to go out there. So I'm excited. And I do get out there in the fall a couple times a year. We go to Pekin and McVille and shooting ducks. And, we don't go
We talked about doing a little pheasant hunting last night.
Yeah, we used to, my dad, this was a pretty neat deal. He graduated from Devil's Lake, so we did a lot of hunting, and he worked for an airline, Great Lakes Aviation or United Express. In the mid-'90s, he brought air service to North Dakota, all these regional little airports. and it was tremendous.
How did we lose you to Minnesota?
I never lived in North Dakota.
Okay.
You know, he moved actually to Duluth, met my mom, and he worked for the airlines. But it was amazing, and it's things I took for granted because we could just fly out there and go shooting. And then even when I was in college, we would get passes. And I would just go up to Farmers Field and like, hey, can I shoot here? You know, and I'd introduce and say, hey, it's Mike Rasmusson, and hey, here's a couple of airline passes. You know, and they loved it. You know, and there was a direct service to Detroit, and I know one of the farmers up on Dry or Sweetwater Lake north of Devil's Lake loved to go skiing in Denver. So that's what we did.
Trade.
Yeah, and I look at it and I just, you know, I regret not going there for school. In fact, every year when I fill out for my hunting thing, it asks if you go for, you know, if you're a resident or if you go to college or whatever. And I always regret that I wasn't. That state is just beautiful.
Mike Rasmusson, you know, radio is his life too here in Duluth, and we were talking about the connections, and it all started with, you know, who do you know, how do you know, just like all of us. The minute you get to a small town cafe, hey, do you know, kind of a thing, and your dad lived that same life, Mike. I mean, okay, before I forget, tell people about watermelon.
All right. So one of the fun stories from George Rasmusson, my great-grandfather, that in one of the letters he mentioned that while they were in the Philippines, they came across a watermelon patch, and they got into the watermelon. And it sounded like they went back several times because it was the only good food. That was in a lot of his letters. He was talking about how poor the food was on the trip out there. Okay. So they got in this watermelon patch because it was food they were familiar with and they liked it. And then at the end, he did write that he goes, he will never touch watermelon again. That he finally got it. And actually, in one of the letters that I read last night, too, it said that after they defeated the army and took over the Philippines, or Manila, and they were coming back, the difference in the food and the accommodations they had on the way back, said it was amazing. But his family, and I guess I can't remember where I read this, but they said that he got off the train and walked right past his family and nobody recognized him. He had gotten malaria and something else, and it was completely unrecognizable.
Skin and bones? Or?
Yeah. And one of the pictures, and I'll send it to you, of him and a couple of his buddies in the war. I mean, he was a good-looking man, you know, and a strong-looking guy. So
I saw that photo last night, you know, that you had. And folks, you know, we will post this with the podcast. If you're sitting there in Barnes County right now and Dazey going, you know what I heard today, and they don't believe you, it'll be there. You can go to the home base at kfjo.com and find it a little bit later. So,
you know, and one thing that we've always dug in or wanted to dig into also is that Rasmussen is typically spelled E-N, and ours is O-N. And my grandma, Hilda, used to always tell us, because we were sons, not sins, was what it was. But as I start looking through my great-grandpa's stuff, a lot of his stuff is spelled E-N. In fact, I have a huge safe that I brought over to my house, and it's printed on there as E-N. So it's somewhere I want to figure out where that switched. Mm-hmm. I haven't run into another O-N. We do run into the E-Ns quite a bit, but it's been it's kind of fun to see that history, and as I said, that I'm excited to go back and get some of this stuff over there.
And you're willing to share it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're willing to get that back to Barnes County.
No question.
And when you know, I realize we only have a little time left, but when you went out to Medora, you know, there had to be a personal connection.
It was. That I can remember driving my grandparents' Buick, leaving Bismarck, and I've never been in a car that went so fast, and would go out there and look at the stuff. And my grandpa had a story for everything, you know, and going through Custer's house and riding through the park, it was just amazing. And I hadn't been there in 30 years. And it was all the same. I mean, it's so beautiful, that whole state. It's really neat. So I'm excited to bring that back and hopefully learn some more.
Yeah, well, and hopefully Barnes County will know exactly what to do with it, which is share people, and I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Mike, you didn't have to tell me these stories, but you did. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here, and we're excited to have you on the air.
You bet.